You gonna do the intro?
I think we should just go because he's got a hard out at 5:30.
Okay, then I'll do a top after it.
Yeah.
Are we rolling, Bob?
We are.
Okay, this is Penn preaching love from Show Creator Studio. I guess you probably heard that in the intro, but I haven't heard the intro yet because we haven't done it because we're rushing. Because I was fast from the airport. I was in L.A. doing Kevin Smith's podcast finally, which we will play next week. And Kevin Smith and I talk about everything, about movies and about eating and stuff. But now, as Ready Rich probably said, or maybe I said, we have Kostya.
Yeah, you got it.
Kostya Kimlat.
Yeah.
Great magician, fabulous magician in the studio, and his wife Amy.
Hello.
And is your name Kimlat too?
It is.
What was your name before it was Kimlat?
Schwartz. It's still kind of both names.
Yeah, you kind of.
She's still working on it. She's not sure.
That's a lateral move in terms of names.
Yeah.
Lateral move
I
in
would
terms
agree
of
with
names.
that.
And where are you from?
Originally from Kiev, but we live in Orlando now.
I know that. I know you're in Orlando now. And I also know that it's considered microaggression or micro-racism or something to ask where someone's from.
Really?
What?
Yeah. You're not supposed to ever do that. But,
we're not offended.
I think it's only when you say from twice. Like, where are you from?
Well, that's only because they don't answer the first from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you say to somebody, where are you from? And they say Orlando, and you say, no, that means they haven't answered it. Because probably you're asking, why they talk funny.
Yeah, why do you look that way?
And when you ask, why do you talk funny, there's sometimes considered to be microaggression. But you came over here young, right?
I was 9 years old.
Yeah, so you have hardly any accent, but you can detect it.
Yeah, a little bit. And when I speak fast. And these days I have to specify that it's Ukraine and not Russia. Before I didn't have to say anything. Now I kind of say even Soviet Union. That makes me feel like that really dates me in the right place.
Oh, really? So because
it was communist times. I grew up then. It was right that time. We left right after it broke up.
Yeah, right after it broke up. So you were actually there for communism.
Yeah, I used to stand in line for milk and bread and experienced a whole different life.
What did your parents do?
They were both engineers. So my dad had a master's degree in engineering, and my mom did too. And then they came here. They had to start all over.
Oh yeah. Was it easy to immigrate?
It took a couple of years. We had to get permission and go to Moscow, travel, just get all the doctor's permission, everything about that. So it took about 2-3 years.
And you have siblings?
I have a sister. Yep. So she's older, but if you see her, she looks younger.
Or at least tell her that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you came over here, so you have a strong memory of communism.
Yeah.
The other day, my son is 12. Mm-hmm. I was sitting having dinner with my family, and something was said about distributing something somewhere, and I said, well, from each of his abilities to each according to his needs. Mm-hmm. That's communism. My son said, no, that's not communism. That's socialism. Communism has to do with the means of production. And then my son...
This is smart for 12, yeah.
My son, on top of that, because my son is, crazier than a shithouse rat. My son,
where does he get that?
My son just turned 12. So for his 12th birthday, one of his friends gave him a iTunes gift card. And he said to me, do I have to, because he has to clear purchases with me, obviously. I said, do I have to clear purchases on this? And I said, no, this is your money. You buy whatever you want, anything you want, any games, anything you want, just buy it. So he said, okay, I'll buy whatever I want. And then 5 hours later, in my email, I got an ebook gift from my son Zoltan Gillette of the Communist Manifesto. He said, maybe you should read this so you know what you're talking about. And then he wrote a poem, which he sent to me with this, which I can probably pull up fairly quickly because since it deals with communism, you might be interested in it. But he wrote a poem about communism to go with the Communist Manifesto. And he had strong opinions on that. So he did
That's
not.
That's a good age, though. I mean, you're learning. You're kind of discovering all about the world, and you're not a part of it yet. I think at 12, you're not a part of the political structure.
No, you're not. But he also goes to a school that is, in a way, rather old-fashioned in terms of he diagrams sentences and a lot of homework and a lot of math and a lot of all that. And they also teach rather politically they teach capitalism fairly strongly, I would say. I'm just vamping until I get down to...
You're looking for the poem?
I just think this poem is an important poem.
We're not live.
But we're going up... I know, but I still think you could... Even the stuff I say when vamping is brilliant. It's like George Harrison right after he tunes up. It's still genius. Maybe I'll actually pay attention, try to find this. I just think it's worth it because...
Did you write... I'll interview Amy in the meantime. Did you write poetry when you were 12?
I wrote a poem. Well, I remember when I was 9, I wrote a poem, but it wasn't about communism. It was about homework.
Well,
So equally negative ideals.
He wants very much for me to... here it is. Communism is for you and... Oh, it starts earlier. Communism is for you and me. It's fun for the entire family. People working across the country to get you food to eat. Communism is for you and I. I don't even have to try. It's guaranteed you won't die. So go enjoy some pie.
Wow.
That's his view of... So now I have the Communist Manifesto that I should read. But obviously no one in your family dug communism?
No, I mean, we saw the writing on the wall before then, and also the corruption and everything that was happening. So that's why we wanted to get out. I mean, and everyone started leaving. I mean, people were getting out of there in the 80s, like late 70s.
So how old are you?
I'm 35.
35. So if I could do the mathematics, I'd be able to tell when you left.
Yeah, in 1992.
92.
Yeah. So I mean, they just saw it. Everyone knew that there was a promised land, and people were leaving from Ukraine to either Israel, to Germany, or to America, Canada. Those were the major countries, and everyone was just trying to get out. Because you knew, like I said, when I talked to my parents, and I've asked them over the years, as you grow up, you kind of have a different perspective on it. And so I asked them at different times why they left. And the last answer was like, we just saw the writing on the wall, that this is not where we wanted to raise our children. And even now, when you look at the news, everything that's happening, the corruption is just still rampant.
You talking about here?
No, yeah. Well, so true as well. Yeah. But a different kind of corruption.
Yeah, very different kind of corruption.
You could literally just pay people off, like cops, politicians, everybody. That's what it was. And when we were leaving, even my dad said that we were stopped by people who tried to take our luggage, and
they had to pay them off
in order for them not to steal our luggage before we left Moscow to fly to New York.
Wow. And when your parents got here, you said they had to start all over.
Yeah.
And how'd they start over? What'd they do?
My mom became a florist and then an esthetician, and she did that until recently. And then my dad worked in this steel factory for 12 hours a day for the first year until they had enough money to put a down payment on a house. And then he started doing computer programming, all kinds of things, and does insurance. Yeah,
this is all the figures on immigrants. Or if you have a choice between an immigrant and a native-born person in any country, any time, you always go with the immigrant. Well, they're always going to be harder working.
Yes, right? Because
they got here.
When you came here, you're like, wow, this is the opportunity. This is what we came here for. And I could have, you think about it, you could continue working just as hard back in the Soviet Union and get nowhere. And whereas here, you're going to put in all this time and effort.
But I believe that's true any country, any place, because you've weeded out the people who can't get there.
You're selecting for risk takers.
Yeah, but also for risk takers, but also for health,
right?
And also for a certain kind of competence.
And people don't realize that when you go through the legal process of immigration, how long it takes and how difficult it is to get here.
And was Russia okay with you? Or the Ukraine okay with you leaving?
Yeah, they were kind of wanted. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can say that in full authority, because I think some people, they wanted them to leave.
Now you can answer this really important question. How come it went from the Ukraine to Ukraine?
I don't understand where it's Ukraine.
I asked this on our first date. Are you from Ukraine or the Ukraine? And you said no, the. I was so surprised.
Yeah, the is came in movies and TV shows. I don't know why.
So you have no idea. I thought there was some sort of big statement on that.
I thought
there's the Hague. And there's the Ukraine, and then we're done, right?
Yeah.
There's not the Bolivia.
No, nowhere else. I mean, you say the United States when you're talking about...
Hey, you do! You do! I never noticed that. You do!
I thought it was a you thing.
You say the United States, don't you? We're going to go to the United States.
But you don't say we're going to go to the America.
I thought the Ukraine was so weird. It's the United States.
You're welcome.
Didn't we cover this when I went all through the sovereign states for you?
No, you went through them very quickly. He can name all the sovereign states.
Nice.
But we probably don't need you to do that right now.
We don't have that kind of time.
He can name them all. He can name them all. And have you been back since?
I went back maybe about 5-6 years ago with my sister. Came back. I mean, it was beautiful. It's very Americanized, very westernized, and Kiev is just a beautiful city. It's gorgeous. But again, seeing it made me grateful. But anytime I've traveled around the world, I'm grateful that the fact that we're here.
Now, do you know about Ukraine Fool Us?
Was it Max? No, Max.
No, Israel.
That was the Israel one. Who did the?
They actually couldn't make a deal with us, and so ended up, I think, just knocking it off. But
You guys didn't bribe the right people.
we didn't bribe the right people. And I was asking then on Sunday school all the time if the Ukraine girls really knock you out, because it's the only place in our popular culture Ukraine has ever been mentioned.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. The Ukraine girls. We thought it was the Ukraine girls, but no, it was the Ukraine girls.
That makes perfect sense. Grammatically, done.
And they got a guy on who did Piff's entire act.
So this is afterwards. So you were negotiating for it after you started it here.
Yeah. We've done a few years here.
Okay.
And they wanted to do it, and then it ended up it was not a good time to go to Ukraine, and it was also they didn't have the money and but they ended up doing it, and astonishingly, they got a guy to do Piff's act.
What?
And the whole act, the same trick.
That's unbelievable.
The dragon
banana
suit.
and everything.
The banana was the part that really killed us, because while he was being judged, he was eating a banana.
What?
And the only change was, instead of the dog for Mr. Piffles, he did a hamster.
Oh.
Which I don't know.
Well, then there we go. Then that's fine.
Totally different act.
It's a red deck. It's not a blue one. It's original. That's
So were you already into magic when you came over?
my dad taught me like 2 card tricks, and so I knew a little bit about it. But then it wasn't until I saw World's Greatest Magic on television, and I saw Jeff McBride and Bill Malone and the Great Magicians, and I just kind of fell in love with it, and then went to a local magic convention and got hooked after that. So I was about 12, 13 when I really got into it.
Oh yeah, well, that's late for most magicians.
Yeah.
I did my first magic show for my 3rd grade class, so...
Are you a teacher?
No, when I was
you're in your 3rd grade.
Yeah, she's been doing magic longer than I have. Again, on our first date, we discovered her passion for magic.
Now, do you perform with it?
Only occasionally. I gave it up. I did a show for my 3rd grade class and then again for my 8th grade class, and I ended up getting an A- on that project, and the minus really bothered me, and I thought maybe magic's just not for me.
Were you one of these like overachievers?
Straight A's all the time.
Yeah.
It didn't serve me well in life.
It didn't?
No, I mean, a minus caused me to stop doing something.
Yeah,
I
that's
really
not fair.
loved.
That's not good.
Yeah, that kind of.
But we brought it back. Like, we got her excited about it. We did do several shows together, and so for me, it was always like, hey, this is like a date. This is great. We're hanging out.
Now, how big a place is you playing now? Are you still doing close-up mostly?
I'm doing close-up magic, but I'm mainly a speaker now. So I'm here in Vegas today. I spoke to 500 people this morning. So I've been for 15 years. I do a speech called "Think Like a Magician," and so I've been doing that. I kind of quietly. I never told any other magicians that I was doing it. I felt like I should pay my dues. But I started back in 2002. I started a company called Think Magic, and so it took me like 5 years to develop the content. And now this is what I do. Mainly, my work is traveling around the country talking to businesses and organizations.
And what's the hook on your Think Magic thing?
So I talk about the role of perception in communication, and so for me, the line that I tell people is that for me, magic is not about deception, but it's about perception, and so that I show them how they can see things through someone else's point of view in order to connect and communicate better, and so there's a lot of different things in magic that we talk about. At one point, I started taking my business really seriously because I saw that the gifted magicians were starving artists, and the really great entertainers that were doing like 7 birthday parties a weekend were doing really crappy, corny, cheesy tricks. So I realized that to be good and to be successful are 2 different things. And so I took the business side really seriously. And so same thing for this. Most of my clients are businesses and organizations, and that's what I get to do in travel. And it was thanks to you guys on the 2nd season of Fool Us. The bio piece that they made for me was talking about that, about Think Like a Magician. And I joke that after 20 years I become an overnight sensation, and that's really thanks to that piece, because I had to put it out there. I had to put it out to the world.
Yeah, you have to tell people what you do.
Yeah. So that made a huge difference.
And do you do magic in that lecture?
I do. Out of the hour-long presentation, there's about 10 minutes of magic, maybe 15 minutes
What do
of
you
magic. I do mentalism, but I always couch it in saying this is tricks. This is what you talk about. That I'm not claiming any real powers, and so I love to let magic stand on its own to let them see the beauty of the art form. I hate magic as metaphor. I hate here's 3 ropes.
Oh, come on, gospel magic. Gospel magic, it's the only valid kind of magic.
Maybe.
You know that nobody likes an overextended metaphor more than me. I love it.
Of course.
I love it. Getting back to Piff, I don't know if you know this, but Piff is from an evangelical family.
Okay.
In England. And he learned juggling and magic in order to do gospel magic.
Wow.
So for my birthday, the only performer I wanted was Piff. And Piff came to my birthday party, which he did at Brookledge in L.A. when I turned 60. And Piff did his Jesus getting into heaven, ripped and restored handkerchief with a picture of Jesus and creating a cross. And it was so good. You've made a very big mistake in your life. You do not want to throw away metaphor.
I still got time.
You have to come back, do that metaphor thing. And your business people eat this up. You're doing really well with it.
Yeah, it's even today actually the client here saw me on Fool Us, and so that's how a lot of them find me, and a lot of them bring me back a second or third year in a row. I have 3 different programs, so it's been amazing business built on repeat clientele. And you know what? I really feel like more authentic because when I'm doing magic, it's like they applaud. They're like, "Oh, you're the best we've ever seen," but it's all about me. Whereas when I'm speaking, I'm giving them valuable take-home things, and it's all about them and their organization. And I obsess about learning about my clients, about their business, understanding what they do. And no matter what industry it is, if perception plays a role in their business, then I can talk to them about it.
You do know I'm sitting here, right? So you do know that when you say stuff like "it's not about me," that I just can you hear me rolling my eyes? When you do that kind of corporate speak stuff, it's about you, it's not about me, it's about what you can take away.
No, that wasn't corporate speak.
Is there any chance you believe this?
No. It's the difference is that it's just more fulfilling when people come up and it's helpful to them. That's not corporate speak. That really is the difference between being an entertainer versus the speaker and trainer. Is that it's just I feel like I'm making more of a difference. It's pretty simple.
But you're really, really good at magic.
Thank you.
Wicked good. I mean, it's almost the first thing you did on Fool Us was very close to not magic, but crossing over into juggling. You're very close to doing what you said you were doing.
Yeah.
Which is no longer magic,
Well, I picked it for a reason because when I was preparing...
Oh, you picked it because we had just done the same fucking trick.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know. I had no clue. I had picked it months beforehand. I had no clue that you guys had done it.
I thought you were much more diabolical.
I wish I could take credit for that, but no. I had...
Because for those who don't know, we did a trick on
Today's Show.
Today's Show.
Yeah.
And a good trick, a famous trick in magic. Triumphed. We did a version, went very well. And then you came out and did the same trick, and that started us to be a little bit relaxed. We said, well, we just did this trick. And it really was ridiculous. It was like 10 days before or something. It was nothing.
Amazing.
We had just, we'd finished doing it. We needed an excuse for the chitter chatter on the Today Show because I don't know what we were pimping, but we were pimping something we had to sell. And so we'd worked it out and done it, and it's not part of our repertoire or anything, but it was clearly in our heads then. And you came out and did it. We kind of relaxed, and then at the moment when it would be very clear how we did it, that you did it the same way, you didn't do it that way.
Yeah.
So we were,
and that's when you got angry.
Yeah.
But it was, and I tell people it was an artistic, and it was like.
Of course. Does anybody believe it?
People ask me all the time. They're like, "Oh, was he really mad?"
That's great.
It's like, And I tell them, I'm like, "No, it was an artistic. It was a respectful thing. That it's a trick that he knows. They know the punchline."
Oh, sure. Yeah. That reminds me. When we did the cockroaches on David Letterman.
Yeah.
We produced all those cockroaches, and Dave went ape shit afterwards.
Yeah.
I get asked that too. I get asked and it was always such a perplexing question. We were on his show. We did a great bid. It killed. The right thing for him to do was to be mad, so he was mad.
Yeah.
First of all, when I met John Cleese, of Monty Python.
Yeah.
John Cleese was just a little shorter than me, but a big guy. He came over to me and said, "When you get angry, do you raise your voice?" I said, "Never. never. He said, you said I'm a pouter. I sulk, I pout, but I don't ever raise my voice. He said, never in anger, you don't raise your voice. I said, never, no, not once. He said, you don't ever get mad like that. I said, no. He said, me neither. But both of us have discovered the comedy potential of a big man yelling. So, you know, people would think that when I would carry on bullshit or something that I was, I had strong
so
feelings
angry,
about
yeah.
this. Never. No, that was just my job.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess when you do something and you present something a certain way, you should not be surprised when people believe you.
Yeah.
I guess that should not be. But it's a wonderful hunk. You know, when it gets popped up on Twitter or something, and I don't like to ever watch myself or hear myself. So I've never seen one of the Foolish shows.
Oh wow!
Unless I happen to be on Twitter and I click a link, I don't know what it is, and I'll see like a minute or two, less than a minute, usually 30 seconds.
Cool.
But I've never seen an episode of Bullshit. Not one. I've never seen one of our Letterman appearances. Never. Which is why you can really see, which I'm very aware of, my memory drift. I mean, I'm very aware because I read a lot about it, about other people's memory drift. But I also know very firsthand how on retelling stories to myself, they change.
Yeah.
Because I now have video evidence that I haven't reinforced. So I can tell you stories about how the cockroaches went on Letterman, and there is video electronic evidence of that I have not reviewed since it happened. So you can see how much drift there is. It's pretty interesting. You know, Teller and I'll be backstage after the show, and people be hanging out, and one of us will be holding court and telling stories, and I'll hear Teller tell stories of things that happened to Penn and Teller that I was there for. And they have no overlap to what I experienced whatsoever. And I also know for a fact that Teller's not lying. I know he's telling it completely truthful. I also know he's not exaggerating, and he's not going for the joke. He's telling the story absolutely the way he perceives it. And then I have gone back because I'm essentially, when all is said and done, I'm a teenage girl. I keep an elaborate diary.
Do you really?
Very elaborate. I mean, every conversation, there's notes on everything. I mean, if you want, you know, James Comey, you know, contemporaneous notes, I got them.
Yeah,
I got them. I got my notes from my Trump meetings, you know. So I know what's
You've always been doing that, and you still do it.
Not always. You know, the funny thing was I started when I was 30.
Okay.
And because I couldn't do anything before computers came out.
What made you start? Was it the computers?
Computers. Yeah. I am more suited to computer typing than anybody in the world. I would type. I learned to type when I was very young because my mom was a typing teacher, because I can't read my own writing. So I always would type, but it bothered me because corrections and stuff were too hard, even a self-correcting IBM Selectric. So when we opened off-Broadway, and I've never done this in my life, Teller and I refuse to celebrate monetary accomplishments. We saw so many friends of ours in bands and stuff go out and buy cars and stuff. So we have a standard thing we used to do. Even this fell away. We used to go out, and if we signed a big deal, we'd have a cup of coffee and a donut.
Nice.
But even that fell away. We lost interest. But for a while, that was it. But when we went off Broadway, after a lot of deliberation, I said, if the review in the New York Times actually blows us, if it actually blows us, not just a good review, but a great review, you know, if it's an over-the-top review, you know, then I will do two things. I will buy a computer, because at the time, which would have been 85, that was actually a hard decision.
Yeah, a big purchase too. Like,
and I wanted a laptop, and or luggable, as they weren't really portable.
A briefcase.
They were luggable, yeah. And I would buy a good electric bass guitar. Those are the two things I decided to buy. And I bought a computer that day, and that's when the Journal started. So I can go back when Teller tells a story, and I can find out, when I've told the story, how much memory drift there's been.
You've still retained your files from 1985?
Sure.
From
Everything.
that old computer, what was it on a floppy disk, and you just
Yeah, it was floppies, and I just kept updating them.
So when you want to retrieve something from 1985, do you put in a floppy disk, or did you?
No.
transfer it to
You
something?
can. There's copy functions.
Fascinating.
So I just move it over. It's all laid out, and it's all laid out by year. And you
That's
don't.
impressive.
You the amount that I dislike clutter. I mean, if you in my office at home, there's nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a computer on a desk with a lot of girly cards.
So when you're writing your books, what's your process like? You just get up in the morning? Is there a certain time or a place where you just type away? And
See, that's the problem. You know, I have a lot of friends. I'm very good friends with Neil Gaiman, and I have a lot of friends who are authors. As many people know, I was very close to Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins, and all these people I know. They're right. They have all these things that they do to be able to write. And I wrote my first novel strictly at Starbucks in 20-minute hunks after rehearsal ended and before I went for dinner. And then my other books, I write really stolen moments, 15 minutes at a time, half
and
hour.
you type on your phone too, with your thumbs, or no?
I can't do it quick enough to type that way.
Yeah.
And I have never felt good about dictation. It seems like I have to see it to move it around. But I have a laptop with me almost all the time. It's in the car now. I always have it on Sunday school, but I figured I don't need it. I don't have notes. So, but I keep that. So I can go back and I can. It's all NSA level encryption, but I can unencrypt the whole thing simultaneously, so I can do word searches.
So what do you think will you do something with that, or is it just for you to hang on to for your kids?
I think I don't use it. I don't believe there is a posterity to worry about. I always feel creepy when people talk about any sort of legacy or something. There won't be that. I can't imagine anyone cares about
to go through all that,
or even anything. I think that once the Penn and Teller, when people say, do you mind being recognized? I always tell them, if I do, I can stop it in 4 months. 4 months is what it will take to be completely and utterly forgotten. If you talk to someone under 30, they don't recognize the name Johnny Carson. I used to be depressed they didn't recognize Lenny Bruce, and then George Carlin. But Johnny Carson is like, oh, well, if you ever thought that famous meant anything, ask who Johnny Carson is.
Yeah.
And if you ask someone under 25, you don't get a hit on George Harrison, you don't get a hit on John Lennon. They may be able to tell you that a Beatle was shot. And I have found lately, I haven't seen anybody talk about this in any sort of quantifiable way, but I think Elvis is going away wicked fast.
Wow.
Because in Vegas, the whole fake Elvis thing
is going out of style?
Just kind of going away. Have you noticed that, Reddy,
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be there were 5 shows in Vegas that were Elvis impersonators.
Now there's just 2.
Yeah, now there's just 2.
Wow.
And you used to be able to be married by Elvis pretty easily. As a matter of fact, I made Elvis very sad. When Emily and I got married, we wanted to get married in one of the cheap places on the strip. So we went in because I was just looking at what the royal wedding cost and was going, well, ours was including the DVD, $300.
Did you invite a lot of people?
We invited nobody.
Yeah.
But there was at that time, which is whatever that was, 14 years ago, that was the one chapel in Vegas that had Wi-Fi hookup. So my sister was able to watch on the internet.
That's so sweet.
And it was very nice. And I also have advice for anybody getting married. I have very important marriage advice. Ask the guy who's performing the ceremony how long it's going to be. Ask him what he's going to say. Because we didn't. So we were standing there going, how long this goes? And we kind of had in our mind that the parameters are probably, 2 minutes and 20 minutes?
Yeah.
But when you're standing, just quietly, the difference between 2 minutes and 20 minutes is reasonable. That's like a lifetime. So it ended up like he went like 12 minutes, and we were expecting like 35 seconds. So
Did he give you like personal advice?
He
Like,
had a memorized speech, but this is
Okay.
where I got him. I got him upset. Was he said, "Wow, Penn." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're getting married." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, I want to do the ceremony for you for free." I said, "Thank you. We'll buy the DVD and stuff." He goes, "No, we'll do it all free for you." I said, "Thank you, but no, we'll pay for it." He said, "Okay, but I'll do Elvis for you." I said, "We weren't really thinking about Elvis." He goes, "No, I do a good Elvis. You get married as Elvis." I said, I don't particularly want an Elvis. I mean, just all we care about is that it be no mentions of God. That's all. It needs to be secular, completely secular. Other than that, we're okay, but we don't really need or want Elvis. I mean, Elvis was fine. I mean, but Elvis is not
a part of our lives.
If you did Dylan, I might considered, but not. And then he just stood there and pouted. And he was already in like the Elvis stuff.
Oh.
And so I had Elvis pouting at me like, "Oh, you don't want me to do the." And then I kind of wanted to backtrack and say, "Well, maybe we should ask him to do Elvis." And I said, "Well, no, we're getting married. It's not like for him."
Yeah, it's like we'll pay for it.
Well, it kind of is for him now. All of a sudden, his desires trump ours. So I believe Elvis is kind of sort of going away. So I don't think that I think if people under 30 in this country do not remember Johnny Carson, George Harrison, and then Elvis Presley is fading, the idea that anybody wants to wade through about 1,000 words a day over 38 years seems really unlikely.
What about your kids?
Very unlikely. I think they'll know more than enough about me.
We don't need to read this.
He knows that I don't know that he produce socialism and communism. He doesn't need to read that. So I can go back and I can search back things like that and find it. I did. I mean, I don't want to. You are opening a wound, but now I realize
so
I have lied.
Okay.
So I feel uncomfortable about this. 1987, there were gaps from computer disk damage that eat at me.
Oh, that's so
insanely because I am I'm as habitual. If I say I'm going to write something every day, I write every motherfucking day. There's no way around that. So looking back, and I look at 87 and see like that February is completely missing, I go crazy. So when you said, "Do you have all those from all back there?" I said yes, with a great deal of bravado, lying to myself as deep inside my heart broke for February 87. But I use it not to document for the future, but to have a conversation with myself in the past. So
do you like work things through? Do you analyze it?
I tell you, I read 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and 1 year ago every morning before I write.
Wow.
So 10 years ago on this date, 5 years ago on this date, and 1 year ago on this date. And back before I was married, if you were a girlfriend and there was an argument that was exactly 1 year apart, like if I read my journal a year ago and it said in there, I was arguing about I'm kind of depressed about this relationship, and then I saw that was the same thing, that was the end. Done.
Wow.
Wait a minute, a year?
A year?
A year? We're fighting about the same thing? Adios. Go to Hawaii. We're gone. We're gone. But it also allows me to see what was important to me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What I was doing 20 years ago, how the world looked to me 20 years ago, how it looked 10 years ago, and then how it looked a year ago.
My mom always said that it's important to read every book 3 times. Once when you're younger than the author, once when you're the same age, and once when you're older, because you'll see that same book from 3 different perspectives.
I want to talk to your mom about this because I had an idea. Man, is this a good idea? And I pitched it as an idea for like an impulse buy when you check out at bookstores. This is all dated now, but I mean, like 20 years ago. I wanted to have for every year old people were a list of what artists' work had come out that year. So someone turns 53 years old, you buy them this little book, 53 years old, here's what Picasso did. Here's what Miles Davis was recording. Here's what Bob Dylan was recording. At 53 years old, here's what the world looked like to these artists. And when I pitched it, they just say, it's going to depress people that
They're not getting as much.
They haven't accomplished as much. I said, no, it's the way that looks. Because, I often go back to what Bob Dylan was doing when he was my age. Because Bob's, 14 years older than me. So I can go back and say, what record was coming out when he was this age? What did it look like? I'm really, really interested in that. So your mother saying to read a book 3 times, exactly that kind of thinking, how you shift. As a matter of fact, do you know the movie Last Tango in Paris?
No.
You know the movie Last Tango in Paris? See?
That's
Johnny
it.
Carson.
I'm done.
You know the Last Tango in Paris either. Oh, my goodness. Ready, Rich? Can I get a witness?
Yes.
Good. Last Tango in Paris was a very, very controversial movie. It came out in the 70s, and like Clockwork Orange, it was an X-rated movie that was nominated for an Academy Award, which is something you can't even imagine now. But Clockwork Orange came out unrated or X, and so did Last Tango in Paris. And Last Tango in Paris was Marlon Brando. As a man, Marlon Brando's age at that time was, I guess he was probably 50, and a young Parisian woman who was 19, and they have an affair that's very, very intense, during which Brando, a lot of monologues, and also a lot of very explicit sex, including a famous scene that has been parodied many, many times. It was parodied on Saturday Night Live, and it was almost a trope. How many jokes were done on this? Where he has her stick her fingers in butter and stick his fingers up his ass. So butter is a sexual lubricant for a woman sticking her fingers up a man's ass.
Is this in France only or everywhere?
It became that. Well, on Saturday Night Live, they did a parody of a false butter commercial, where you did there was a commercial that it tastes so much like butter you couldn't tell the difference, and it was Belushi doing his Brando impersonation,
Nice.
up the ass and so on. So Last Tango in Paris came out when I was about 19, so there was nothing in the movie but this 19-year-old naked Parisian woman who is gorgeous. I also she did a conversation where she was peeing on the toilet and all sorts of, and of course the anal stuff with the butter. It was so intense, and she was so sexy. And so this ends up, of course, having a sad thing, because she just died recently, the woman that played it, Maria I don't remember. Begins with an S, her last name. Brando was credited as a genius and a hero for doing this movie. She was credited as a slut for doing the movie. Horrible. And then also she then had people on the set later claimed that she wasn't even aware of some of the sex scenes that were going to happen.
Schneider.
Did hear about this.
Schneider. Which she also contradicted. We don't really know what was on the set. We don't know. And we don't know that kind of stuff. But I saw it when I was 19. There was nothing in the movie
Except her.
but her.
Yeah.
And it was that heart pounding, and also her free attitude, the character, and also the actor, I think, had this kind of sophisticated, cosmopolitan quality that was so, at that time, so purely feminist. Feminism changes their point of view a lot, but she was so open and free and great. And Marlon Brando was just this weird old guy, And then I saw it when I was like 30. And it was like, she's okay. Boy, Brando's doing really interesting stuff. But some of this stuff is arbitrarily crazy. Like the stuff he says in the monologues, I think they just put this in to be weird. It's total nonsense. But man, he's a great actor. But I saw it again when I was like 50. And it was like, oh, okay, this is a documentary on my life. Everything he says is exactly true, word for word. There's a woman in it? I didn't notice. But it was just absolutely the stuff that was spouting nonsense was absolutely reading my mail. You know, just reading my mail absolutely from my heart. Brandon was dead on it. So I just went, wow, it's just that changes. So your mom doesn't suggest that for Daniel Steele. She suggests that for. What's your mom's favorite book?
You know, she just knows so much poetry. So I don't even know if she has a favorite book. I can't think about it, but she's memorized so many poems. And when we came over here, one of the things we did is my parents shipped 20 boxes of books to America that took 10 months to arrive.
Because it's really hard to buy books in the U.S.
Well, it wasn't. Well, yes, these books, yes.
Really?
These books. This is like Russian translations of Jack London, of Shakespeare, of like literally that. And so to me as a kid growing up, it was like this is where it's at. And when I got into magic, it was the same thing, obsessed with books, and that was the example they set for me. So what you were saying, by the way, about that connection reminds me of a Mark Twain quote, which is that when I was 14, my dad knew absolutely nothing. By the time I turned 21, I was amazed
how much he learned.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great quote. I want to ask you. Then we're gonna break and go into the. We'll do the rest of this Wednesday, but there's a movie called Failsafe. Do you know the movie Failsafe? No. It is the serious version of Dr. Strangelove.
Okay.
You know the Dr. Strangelove. Nuclear holocaust, mutually assured self-destruction. Failsafe did a very, very serious movie about a false confrontation between the Russia and the U.S. that ends in the launching of nuclear bombs. And of course, Dr. Strangelove does the comedic version of that. I think Failsafe is 1,000 times better movie. But in that movie, there is a line that I have always wanted to say. Well, Buck, how's your Russian? Is what the president says to his assistant. Do you still speak Russian?
I do.
Fluently?
I do, yeah.
You keep it up?
Yeah, because that's what we speak at home. Because it was the Soviet Union, we learned Russian first, then Ukrainian, and then I went to a school where we were learning English early on as well.
Oh,
so I don't speak Ukrainian, ironically, but I do speak Russian.
Oh, you don't speak Ukrainian?
No.
Have that faded away?
I honestly just didn't use it at all. Now, when I came back to Ukraine, all the signs are in Ukrainian. They're very proud of the heritage, and the languages come back. But back then, it was Russian everywhere.
Oh, that's right. Sure, it would be. And do you have any memory? Can you read?
Yeah, I can read. I read slower, so it becomes frustrating. But certainly, I can read and write. And
in Ukraine, I would say.
Oh, in Ukrainian, it's like the difference between Spanish and Portuguese, almost, where they're close but they're different.
That's a really good metaphor for me, being that I have a doctorate in both Portuguese and Spanish. So I have that inside out. So you say that difference, I get the exact.
You got it.
What I'd like you to do is compare. How is it compared from English to English? Because those would be the two languages that I can basically get by in.
British English and American.
No, not even that. I can do anything in British English. I'm terrible in British English. But we will be back Wednesday with Kostya.
Sounds great.
God, and Amy.
Yes.
That was Penn Sunday School.
That was Penn.
Are you going to do the close? Cool. Cha-cha-cha.
And to our listening ears,
You become naked.
all nature sang and round us rang the music of the spheres. That was Penn.
Yeah, we'll be back. Maybe we'll talk some magic. But I think I'm much more interested in Russia than I am magic. That's the sign of the times. Maybe we won't talk too much about Last Tango in Paris. It's in my head.
You heard about the journalist that faked his death?
Yes. You going to talk about that? You don't know
I
anything
got
about
nothing
that?
on that. I mean,
Okay.
I read about it, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I just read about it.
Sunday school.
You know I love you. Get the butter. We're going to do an intro to this next one or not?
No, we'll catch you later.
Okay, because we had a hard out, right? Okay, this is Penn Jillette preaching love. Back with Kostya and Amy. Boy, Amy, Amy's my light at the end of the tunnel. If I get through his name, I could say Amy.
You're welcome.
So, Your parents speak fluent English, of course?
Yeah.
No. And
Yep.
were they already speaking English pretty well when they came over?
They went to school for it. So before we moved over here, they took, I think, a year or two of classes. And then when they came here, they took English as second language classes as well. Yeah, we wanted to fit in. And even, like, we didn't want to hang out with other Soviet people. It was just like, hey, we come to America.
And where did you move to for another?
To Orlando, Florida. Straight to Orlando.
Right to Orlando.
Yeah, straight
All they knew was Disney World.
It was a lottery pick. We had no choice. We just said no to New York because everyone was moving to New York. And then it was a random lottery pick. We ended up in Orlando.
What do you mean a lottery pick? From the government?
It was, so we were sponsored by the Jewish Federation, and in Orlando they ended up sponsoring, because that's what it was. It was like Jewish refugees were leaving, the Soviet Union as fast as they could, and so the Federation of Orlando just sponsored our family. They helped people, donated clothes and furniture and everything else, and
So-
it helped.
Mormons and Jews are all have Orlando as their goal, right? That's the whole point of the Book of Mormon. You
In
might
the
not know that.
musical.
In the musical, yes,
Musical, the
yes,
Book of Mormon.
Orlando.
Yeah, they're all going. They're all going to. So you've been in Orlando since you were 9.
Yeah. And I love it. I know everyone is always like, "Oh, Orlando," but like, no, there's more to it than Disney, and we're very, we love it.
Much more than Disney. But I found, and there's been a few times I've gone down to do shows and stuff when I've been in Orlando at an actual Disney property
Yeah.
for like 3 days, and nothing can make you more sexually perverse than being on the Disney property. You get off there and you want to find the dirtiest strip clubs
When you're
possible.
done.
I only want places that are doing things that are illegal. Everywhere.
Yeah.
I want things that are illegal in Thailand. It gets you it's so squeaky.
Yeah.
And so you got to get out there. But are there funky places in Orlando now too?
Yeah, there
Because
are.
what I used to do is I used to always go to Gatorland.
Yeah.
And the Coral Castle.
Oh, Coral Castle's that's down south. That's
I don't know. When I was in Florida,
Yeah.
if I knew I had to go to Disney, I would go to these funk
Yes.
places like Coral Castle and of course the Dolly Museum, of course, but also Gatorland.
Yeah, my dad took me to Coral Castle the first time. It was just what a cool story and a fascinating guy. Everything about it is just amazing.
Sure. And do you like Gatorland? Have you been to Gatorland?
A long time ago, probably with as a kid.
You walk into the gift shop, it's the mouth of an alligator.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
And they have the gator jumperoo, where some nut holds a full chicken over there, and the gator jumps out and eats the chicken.
Yeah.
Where else would you? Happiest place on earth, my ass. I want to go to Gatorland, but I like the fun. What funky places are in Orlando?
So, we live in downtown Orlando, and so that's starting to really develop, and there's lots of little cafes and restaurants. Funky, I don't know. I mean, there's other little parts of Orlando that
There's funky districts.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like I'm not talking about like stuff like trying to be Brooklyn.
Right.
I'm talking about stuff that's like the United States of America, like Gatorland. Wasn't there? There was going to be an Elvis museum there, wasn't there?
I didn't know about
There
this.
was going to be something. They were trying to do nothing else.
All the Elvises that are leaving Vegas are
I
going to
thought
be moving to Orlando.
It was part of the. There's a Jewish group that's moving there.
That's what it is. They're sponsoring them. That's good.
Moving there. They have a choice. They can go to New York, Israel, or Orlando. That's where the Elvises are going. That's where all the Elvises are going. So when you follow politics, I had one friend who had also moved over from Russia, and he was crazy, pro-Reagan, capitalist nut about that. And I have had another, he was a closer friend, but I have another few acquaintances. And that seems to be something they have in common. Did you or your family fall into that?
I don't understand. I don't know. There's just kind of, I guess, they like a strong leader. They've had for a century. They've been lied to by their government. That's what they're used to. And they have this idea of a strong dictator is a wonderful thing to have. And so when they see that in other countries, they see democracy as weak. And I don't understand it.
No, but you just said the backwards what I thought. What I mean is when they come over here, they are so raw America, raw capitalism. I mean, are you someone that if someone mentions socialism, you just kind of cringe a little bit?
No, because I don't know. I don't know. Here's the thing. It's like because, and maybe this is a funny thing, but I'm amazed that you have the platform, not amazed, but I admire the fact that you have the platform to talk about it. I have kept all my political beliefs and everything to myself as a corporate entertainer.
Well,
and
that
magician.
ends right now.
Done. We're done.
We're done. Up until now, you've kept your. But I mean, you have a viewpoint that's pretty important. I mean, you have 9 years old is a little bit young, but you have a family that lived under a very different style of government than supposedly we have. I mean, they are. Everybody seems to be growing a little more together, and everybody seems to have a little more of a mixture of capitalism and socialism and everything. I mean, we certainly. For those who are hardcore libertarians, there's a great deal of socialism in the United States. But so, I mean, what is your family's view on that? I mean, your mom and dad must have loved getting here. They worked hard enough.
Oh yeah. No. This is the American dream. So we love it. I think what I was thinking you were saying is that when the people that come from Russia, they support hardline leaders. I wasn't thinking they support Reagan and democracy. I was thinking more like they miss Putin.
Sure.
And they like the strong man. That's what.
Yeah, that's why I mean you said the opposite there. But the American dream seems to, if you want to talk about that, you talk to immigrants about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, my family just in general is just happy to be here, and we have our political views, but it's certainly, I think we're almost like, hey, we're just happy to be here, let's stay quiet. our people have been, killed centuries ago, not decades ago, we were being killed, so hey, let's just be quiet, everything will be fine.
It's okay. Yeah. And, so did you have a job separate from Magic?
I did. I had the same job for 12 years. I was the marketing director for the Jewish Community Center in Orlando.
Okay.
Which was the community center where Kostya settled at right when their family moved. So.
Okay.
And we never met there. We met later on, but that's where she worked, and then she left her job.
I just left.
Yeah. And so you were asking earlier about the magic part, and we have a funny connection because on our first date, we discovered that we had connected much earlier before, and we were talking about magic. And she's like,
I told you I had always had an interest in magic. Oh, and I explained to you that I was so into magic that as a kid I used to post on these news groups. Did you do news groups like alt.blank?
I didn't.
So it was like an early
I knew the
internet
news
thing.
group, but I mean it wouldn't have been the magic ones.
Right. Okay. So I told him that I used to post on alt.magic in the 90s, and he said that he used to post
I was like,
on
no way, I know what you're talking about. I was on there as a kid too all the time. So she went home that night and she found her old posts because Google archived everything.
See?
Yeah, Google archived it, right? So I'm reading through all my posts from 97, 98.
And you found out you had a huge battle over the double lift.
Close.
And so I found this one question I asked on January 1st, 1998. I was 13, living in Baltimore. I scroll down. The next day I got a reply, January 2nd, from a 14-year-old in Orlando, and it was Kostya.
And we didn't know about this until 15 years later when we met.
See, I love this. There's always those things. Now that we got, especially with facial recognition and stuff, people are finding
The photos where they're in the same place at the same time in Disney or whatever.
15 years earlier, they're in the same place.
No, it's crazy. When we found that out, I was like, okay, I believe. I did not believe in anything up until now. Now, okay.
Although once you got magic, you've limited the pool a little bit. But I'm really interested. Why did you get out of magic? Because you got the A-. Is that really the reason?
I don't know if I was always a very creative child, so I had a lot of creative interests, a lot of visual arts and performing arts, magic, theater, and so it could have just been that I found a new creative passion. I just cycled through them.
Because, one of the things that, no matter what anyone calls to interview me about, one of the things I talk about is women in magic.
Yeah.
Because we've had to lie about that a lot and fool us. We've had to misrepresent almost to the point of tokenism to get women onto our show.
Right.
And it's paying off incredibly.
Yeah, you're encouraging a whole new generation. They're seeing it. I'm seeing it all the time. We've been talking so much about this.
The truth is, 5 years ago, in a 5-year period, we had one little girl show us a magic trick. One little girl show us a magic trick. Now it's every 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's so wonderful.
That's a huge factor.
Yeah.
And I've said this so many times, I'm going to say it again. But, I have a son and a daughter. And people say to me all the time, is your son into magic? And the answer is no, my daughter is. But they don't ask about my daughter, so there's still that. And people ask me, why aren't there more women in magic? And I say, because we didn't let them in. I believe the magic circle did not allow women in at all until very, very late. The magic...
It's the Brotherhood of Magicians.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The Brotherhood of magicians, yes. And you had to go to if you were into magic, and you were even in the 90s, even that recently. If you were a 14-year-old girl, the places that the magicians congregated with their cigars and unpleasant old guys doing magic was not the place a young girl would want to hang out. Certainly, my daughter wouldn't want to go to the places that when we used to meet magicians in the 80s and 90s, the kind of places hanging out.
Yeah.
Even the Magic Castle is a bit more conducive, but the Magic Circle is certainly not conducive. It's still got that barroom yucky feel, and women are portrayed strictly as consumers of magic, and that's changing so quickly. I am not. I probably shouldn't talk about this new season of Fool Us coming up, but there's real shockers in terms of women. I mean, what we're going to see, I think, is what we saw in comedy, whereas comedy is now entirely dominated by women. There's no, I guess, with Louis C.K. Being sidetracked, shall we say, but with Amy Schumer and Tina Fey and Sarah Silverman, that's
Ali Wong. Yeah, if you look on Netflix, there's so many now.
That's where comedy is,
and that's where you think magic is going as well now.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
I think and the other thing is that the women who did magic on our show, we saw a really different thing because, and I'm going to be talking about this on Fool Us, but even as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, and of course now too, but the women who perform in magic would pick a persona that either played into the wizard stuff or even played into like dominatrix stuff. You'd see a lot of corsets, and dyed black hair, and playing up sorceress and those kind of images, and a very strong character. And some of them doing those characters were wonderful, but it did show you something. It did show you something. And what we never had on Fool Us, which we just didn't ever come up, was a woman who walked out like the men. Many of the men walk out, which
just
is
herself.
Well, nice jeans and a button-up shirt.
Yeah,
which for some magicians, for some style, if it's going to be that you want to talk to the audience in a direct way and you want to be like Robert Houdin and dress just like your audience, jeans and a shirt is what you should be doing. If you're really trying to be Robert Houdin, if you want to wear the top hat and tails, when he wanted to dress like his audience, top hat and tails was that.
Yeah.
Right now, probably jeans and a shirt. You know? And we had this year, I think there were 2 women on who just walk out looking like people.
It's awesome.
Wow.
Now, I have nothing against people that want to do eccentric performance. I'm a huge Sun Ra fan, huge Tiny Tim fan. Even Bob Dylan's come out on stage in whiteface. But there's also something so powerful about a woman just walking out in jeans and a shirt to say,
and not playing a character, but just being a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about art forever on this. Obviously, being a character, she's walking out on stage.
Yeah,
but and she's got a trick she prepared, so she's not really a regular person. But doing that persona, that idea that leads directly from Lenny Bruce walking out on stage and saying, my wife divorced me today. That sense of the continuing story, the real person directly speaking to you. And there was not a woman who, a little bit with Jen, but before this year, we didn't really have women doing that. And this year, a bunch of them. And this year, escalating very rapidly.
I see it all the time in shows. Parents come up and they tell me that their girls are into magic, they're learning about it. It's so wonderful to see it, and I talk to them about why that's happening, what the difference is, and certainly Fool Us has played a really big part in it. I mean, the people, it's amazing. Your show has gotten through to so many people, and people watch it, they love it, they come up after every show, they talk about it, and it's beautiful to see that making such a positive difference.
But there's also another thing, and this was also true of comedy. But there is something, you know Jerry Seinfeld's description of magic. Here's a quarter, now it's gone. You're a jerk. Now it's back. You're an asshole. Show's over.
Yeah.
That sense of ha ha, gotcha. I know something you don't. Magic is in the stereotype, and I think in many, many cases for real, magic is discovered by young boys. 9, 10, 11, 12, going to 13, 14 when they get better. And there are, it's often the realm of outcasts, as rock and roll might have been in 62, 63, but moved instantly mainstream. But it's for the outliers. It's for the outcasts.
I think that's another reason maybe women didn't get into magic earlier, right?
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. And so there ends up being, then that grows right into sexual frustration, and there is the outsider who is feeling wronged, feeling desperate, and so magic takes on that personality. Magic takes on the personality of ha ha ha, I can do this, ha ha, you can't, ha ha, fooled you, fooled you,
I
fooled
think
you.
the kid is looking for control over the environment too. They want to do something that their parents can't do, their friends can't do, and that's why they get into it. Whereas girls have the social skills and they do have the friends. They're not,
Some.
Yeah.
But there is I believe, built into magic, there is a misogyny built into the culture of magic that, including some of the heavily symbolic things, which is, torturing a woman in front of Mylar to bad music. Even that itself would put the woman in the box and saw her in half, although there's a lot of reasons why you're doing that are technical, like women are smaller and more flexible, and there's all those reasons. But it's really hard to get away from that image not being in some way unpleasant. So when you were into magic, you bumped into that all the time, right?
I honestly think that I probably got out of magic because I had no mentorship. There was no community. I don't think I even knew that there was such a thing as magic meetings. And there was no internet. Well, I mean, there was internet, clearly, because we communicated. But no one was saying to me, oh, go
Well, there's no web.
Yeah, that no one was saying, go to this meeting, go meet other magicians. The only magicians I ran into were at bar mitzvahs. I wasn't having conversations with real people.
That's really the only place there are magicians. I mean, if you want to talk about real magic in this country, it only happens at bar mitzvahs.
Sometimes bat mitzvahs.
Once in a while, occasionally, but that's the very odd little girl.
But that'll change now. It'll change.
It will change.
The internet changes everything.
Yeah.
The internet changes everything because the internet allows you to learn from people without having to smell them. I mean, that is what the internet accomplishes, right? You can go and watch a video of a guy who is tremendous at doing certain skills, even though you wouldn't want to be in a room with that guy. And then we have, in juggling, it was the same thing. In juggling, we had who am I thinking of? I just blanked on the name. The club passers.
Oh, passing zone?
Yeah, no, not passing zone. I'm talking about Olga and
Valchenko.
The Valchenkos. You know the Valchenkos? No. They got to all of a sudden Olga and Vova Golchenko. They were 11 or 12 years old.
I'm always afraid to take a stab at that name.
Yeah, Volva. Yeah, I said, your name means pussy, and I would tell him. I said, go with Vlad, but he stays with that. Anyway,
I don't think there's an L there. It's not Volva. It's Vova.
Vova.
Yeah, Vova.
Well, when you say it, it doesn't sound like it like that. Vova. When I talked to the passing zone and they were passing, I was so proud that when I was at my club passing peak, we could pass 9 clubs, me and Mike Motion. I was so proud of that. And then the passing zone was doing 10, And then we found out that there were 2 13-year-olds in Russia doing 12. And they'd never met any other jugglers.
Because that led to freedom. Yeah. You could juggle 12. You could get out of it.
It did. That was the crazy thing.
Yeah, chess, anything. Those were the people that were celebrated. If you could do something that made your country proud, then you could leave and you can get out, and usually you tried not to come back.
Well, no, they did it and this is one of the Russians I was referring to as somebody who is hard hardcore libertarian, no socialism, nothing. He and his sister were really, really good, Vova. And I heard about the Gelchenkos, and then a bunch of jugglers kind of got together and brought them over to the U.S. without their parents. And they were kind of shuttled off here and there, back and forth to different
That's cool.
different jugglers that they'd live with. And then when they got to be 17 or 18, they were on Oprah. And then they wanted to be citizens, and everybody was writing these letters that said, you know, they were the best jugglers in the world and they should be American citizens, and they brought over. And the great thing is, the second they got their citizenship, no more juggling.
Wow.
They became computer programmers. They went to
that is something.
college. Now that is not literally true. Vova still juggles all the time, but stopped performing entirely. Maybe once in a while in Santa Monica, he picks up a few clubs and does some stuff. But
Oh, I've got so many questions for them. Like, that's so fascinating. Like, did they know? Was that their ticket out? And then they're like, we're
how
done.
do you know?
Like,
How do you know at 12 years old that if you practice juggling all the time, you can get out of Russia?
because you see chess masters do it.
I guess so.
You
Yeah.
see, that's.
And they were, they were monsters. Monsters. And I mean, now you just, I remember talking to Vova, and he went to a big, very hardcore atheist. Okay. And he said, I can't go to the atheist meetings. It's all socialists. I need, I want Ayn Rand. I want to be absolutely atheist, absolute freedom. That's all I want. Can't find that anywhere. He's always complaining about that. But I've always written that off to, when you've lived in Russia and worked hard to get out, you probably don't want any sort of that creeping kind of socialism in there.
Yeah,
But that's, once again, just a stereotype that
No, yeah, it's true. Well, it's true. It is a stereotype. Every story is different. Everyone has their own kind of experience of it. And I mean, at the end of it, we just want freedom. We just want the ability to do what we want. And the problem comes when you try to convince someone else that your way of life is the way of life for them. As long as we can avoid that, then.
Well, I have no problem with trying to convince them. It's pulling out guns to convince them that bugs me.
Yeah.
So you've been you've traveled around the world doing your.
Yeah, it was thanks to magic at first. I started doing magic lectures at a really young age. I started coming up with tricks that would just fool the other local magicians. And I wrote a set of lecture notes when I was like 16, 17.
16 to 17?
Yeah, I wrote my first set of notes, and then when I was 18, I got on a Greyhound bus. I bought a two-way ticket, and I just called a bunch of... What happened was in Orlando, we had the magic lectures, and I was like, well, this is what you do. Once you come up with some magic, you go and share it with your fellow magicians.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I just wrote this book one summer, got on a Greyhound bus, bought this student ticket, and I went to Peoria, Illinois, Huntsville, Alabama, all these random little cities.
All the places you dreamed
The
of
great places.
back in the Ukraine.
Yes. So that's it. And that was when I started meeting other magicians, and then that led to international conventions, and then I got to travel to England and Japan, Australia, all around. And then after a certain amount of time, I kind of I stopped doing magic. I stopped doing magic for magicians, and I was going to just focus on just the performance. But I feel, I mean, that this is the American dream, to do card tricks for a living.
Yeah, sure.
It's the greatest.
Aren't many places around the world you can do that?
No.
Card tricks for a living. There aren't many places in the U.S. you can do that for a living.
It's true. It's true.
That's the thing that's so troublesome and everybody in magic says this, and there does not seem to be a solution. I get asked every night at our show, where can I go to see good close-up magic? Like the stuff you have on Fool Us?
Yeah.
Where can you go? Don't have any answer. And I know all these monster close-up guys that have no place to work. Every once in a while, a magic bar pops up here and there. But it seems like, and I guess the finances just can't handle it. I guess the arithmetic just can't do it. You can't do magic for 5 or 6 people and make a living. Whereas anyone who's never seen close-up magic, it is an entirely different art form than stage magic. Stage magic is much more akin to normal theater storytelling, stand-up comedy in most cases.
And that's what my dad told me. When I first started doing close-up magic, he's like, good. Like, he's like, you don't need the illusions and the big stuff. This is what people love. They love a good story. They love close-up magic. And yeah, Chicago Magic Lounge just opened. There's a
I haven't been there. Have you been there?
It's beautiful. Yeah, we just went there a few months ago.
Pip was telling me it's just gorgeous.
Amazing. But they also had a non-magician be the investor, and he's the one that believed in them. They had a show running. He believed in them. He helped them get started. So I think when it comes to the finances, the problem happens when magician, an artist, has this idea of, oh, I'm going to have a bar.
Well, yeah, you don't ever want a magician in charge of anything. You need a grown up. But it'll be interesting because if someone can find the template for being able to do close-up magic, because people really want to.
They love it. But there's a lot of small magic shows. There's a parlor style close-up / parlor. So in Chicago, LA, New York, I think when you go anywhere, you start seeing that, and you can find there's small shows that are put on by the artist and maybe a small theater group or something. It's happening more and more. And
I hope so.
Yeah,
because that's such good stuff and so different. You know, I remember seeing Eugene Berger.
Yeah,
and this was such a profound thing. I saw him in a place with 20 people, maybe 15. I really didn't like him. I know everybody loved Eugene Berger, and I loved him as a person. He was a good friend. Didn't like his show much at all. Then I saw him with 4 people, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. And it was some of the same material. And the difference in a close-up worker who's doing that stuff that's right, direct eye contact. And also, Eugene Berger had this, there's this, which I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this in magic, but there is this social violation that magicians in real close-up do. There's too much touching. There's too much eye contact. A lot of touching of the hands.
Yeah.
A lot of touching of the shoulders. A lot of touching people's things. I'm from New England. Touching people and touching people's things, very uncomfortable for me. And, you know, real personal stuff. Like I want to touch your cell phone, you know, and hold this and write your name and give me that pen back and all this exchange stuff that is not something you bump into in a extensive exchange with a stranger. You don't get 2 minutes of a touch every 30 seconds from a stranger that isn't leading to some sort of intimacy or maybe a business deal or a friendship or something like that. Very rare. And a person that can use that to make that a beautiful thing, it is something very, very different than a stage thing. And Eugene Berger, when he would work with just 4 people, 5 people, everybody had that, ooh, is this guy getting too close to me? And then, okay, you are.
Yeah.
And it's that okay, that release. It's that thing that you must have dealt with a lot that I've never found a way to get over. I didn't try that hard, but never tried a way to get over, which is walking up to someone and saying, would you like to see some magic? And
I mean, this is what I have a whole hour and a half that I teach to business people about this, and I say that the only reason I'm here is because I've been doing close-up magic for 20 years. My job has been to interrupt strangers at cocktail parties who have no clue who I am, and within 30 seconds, I have to break the ice physically and mentally to get them to be comfortable and not want me to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the greatest thing ever. And I know magicians who say they hate. They're like, I'm too good for it now. I've made it. I don't need to do walk-around magic. I love it. I'm doing it tonight for people, you know, to me it is the greatest challenge to still have to win those people over, because they don't care what I've done before, where I've been. They care about whether I'm present with them right now and if I'm paying attention to them.
So what do you feel about that breaking of the intimacy? I mean, you must be aware of it.
Oh yeah, so like one of the first things I do is magic with rubber bands, and the way
because people love rubber bands.
They're fascinating. The texture.
Yeah, sure.
Well, actually, this is a part of it, is because they're seeing that it's a magician and they're going, "What is this?"
They've had rats in a cage, and they give them a choice between food, cocaine, sex, and rubber bands.
Every time,
and they will starve to death hitting the rubber band button.
Well, the reason I think it's what it does for me, it has a very particular things, is that when I take out the rubber bands, I say the line, I say, I have no fancy props. This is the whole show right here. And I hand them these 2 rubber bands from about 2 feet away, and they take them from me. And then when I take them back, I turn, I position my body so I'm standing shoulder to shoulder to them, and I extend my hand, and now I'm allowing them to enter my body, my zone, my personal zone.
Butter.
My butter. And then I turn to the other person, and I extend my hand, and they also come in. So what I'm doing is I'm breaking the physical ice.
Yes, exactly.
Using those rubber bands. And then they're playing with them, they're examining them. That allows me to slowly ease that tension.
Yeah, they're touching things of yours.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I love it. To me, it is the greatest thing because because I've done that trick 10,000 times, I don't have to pay attention to my hands or my mouth. I'm watching them, and I'm studying who their personalities are, which one's going to take control, who's the analytical one, what are they going to say and do, and then I decide what I'm going to do next. So to me, I love close-up magic for that reason because it's a test every single time.
Now, how much jazz do you do in a close-up environment?
Love it. That's my favorite thing is the jazz magic. Just playing around, think of a card, pick whatever you want, playing with it. That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still practicing? I know that you were practicing when you were learning Johnny's card trick. So are you still heavy into the card stuff?
I've been doing less of that, but I will confess that once again, there's really no time that I'm ever not thinking about Bob Dylan. And I was really interested that before Bob Dylan did before the Sinatra period, in between when he was doing the stuff that came out in 2001, 3, and 4, he did the greatest albums of his career, Love and Theft and Modern Times, and then Up to the Tempest and so on. But before that, he did a whole record of other people's songs, blues songs, that he had learned when he was younger, and just did covers. Greatest songwriter alive in the world today doing covers. Nutty situation. And I was thinking, well, what was he trying to learn during that? So I sat down and said, I'm going to write a Chinese sticks routine, I'm going to write a die box routine, and I'm going to write a linking rings routine.
Yeah.
I want to see what that's like. So I've been working lately crazily on the Chinese sticks,
nice.
Which you'll be happy to know I've changed the name to the correlation sticks, and it's all about David Hume's and
nice.
Correlation is not causation.
Oh yeah.
And I'm talking a lot about New York City in the 80s. They found a strong correlation between the selling street vendors of ice cream and the committing of serious crimes. And it's about correlation and causation, but being another cause behind that.
Sounds like metaphor magic.
It exactly is, and that's what's so good about it. It's exactly that, precisely that. And it's not only is it metaphor magic, it's overextended metaphor magic. So you never you broke out of that awkward thing of breaking that.
Yeah, I remember my first gig, and I asked another magician there, how do I approach? What do I say? And he's like, "Say, hey, I'm here to do tricks." And it was a terrible opening line, but it kind of helped me get over it. And then now I have so many strategies that I've used. So I walk up to a group, and my favorite thing now is, good evening, I'm the magician, and then I wait for their kind of reaction, hesitation, and I say, I'm actually really terrible, so I have to pay you all to act amazed, and then I take out the money and to do it, and right away that tension eases, because that's what they're thinking. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I'm paying attention to them, I'm acknowledging what they're assuming about me, and then I'm saying that out loud so that they can relax. So I'll say, I'm here to hustle you, because I was tired of them saying, oh, you're a magician, watch your keys, watch your wallet. I was so sick and tired of that line that I started saying, good evening, I'm the magician, I've been asked to hustle you. And as soon as I said that, they laughed, and no one would make that stupid joke anymore. So I have dozens and dozens of these little strategies that I use.
If you have strategies to stop people from making stupid jokes, you need a Nobel Prize.
Everyone gets one these days now.
Yeah, they're giving them out pretty easily now.
But yeah, that's what I love about it.
At least everybody I know says you deserve one. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
You don't have to actually win one. Well, yeah, that I saw. I saw Dave Vernon. I saw Eddie Fechter.
Yeah.
I would see these guys, and it really bugs me that we have all these people on Fool Us that are so good, and they're trying to get to a bigger level, and I would like them not to. I would like them to, even if they do that, to still have a place, because you can still, even though there is stadium rock, you can still hear a band in a bar, where you're supposed to hear them, and even though there's stadiums with guys doing acoustic guitars, you can still find a coffee house with 20 people watching and a guitar, never, to my taste, I would like it to be totally unamplified, just a guitar and voice. But even guys in the street now carry a. So did you ever do street magic? Did you ever do any of that?
I wanted to when I was a teenager. I used to see it in downtown Orlando, and that's what kind of like I read the books on street magic, and I read that when you go out there, you have to be hungry because it's the only way you're going to make money. Because if you go out there with a full stomach, you're going to be like, oh, I'm fine.
Who wrote that?
Charles. I can't remember the street magic book, but fun idea, though. It's an interesting idea.
But nobody, at the time at least, made more money than me street performing.
In New York?
I was in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And Philadelphia, I had a lot of rules. I would only work where it was illegal. I refused to work any place you had to sign up. It offended me so much.
Nice.
And everybody told me, you should always appear like you need money. And first thing I did when I did street performing was I went out and bought the most expensive watch I could that was ostentatious and really expensive clothes. And I said, I want people to be embarrassed to give me less than a 20, even if there's like 500 people watching me. So I used to do, I very rarely did a show that was less than $300. And I'd sometimes hit
killing it, yeah.
500, 600, And I would do, in a weekend, I made enough money that's what financed Penn and Teller when we started, financed the Asparagus Valley Costa. So I loved street performing because I loved being able to just create a crowd, but I never found a way to handle that intimacy. As a matter of fact, even now, I learned one of your tricks and really liked it and couldn't find a place that it fit in for me,
Yeah, the lighter, right?
I love the lighter trick. It's really good. And Mox has seen it a bunch. I've done it for my daughter a lot, my son a lot, and I still have in the refrigerator. I still have some of the props.
Well, so I'm glad you keep it in the refrigerator. That's one of the things the reason I created that trick was because we were doing promotions at bars and it was a loud music and it was too crazy and I was tired of yelling and losing my voice. So then that became a perfect opening where it was just like, hey, magic, look, and that's it. That's all you have to say. And to me, those few opening seconds, the things that makes most magicians nervous, is now what drives me. That's the part that I'm looking forward to.
That way of dealing with intimacy with strangers is a fascinating thing, and especially as we get into, this phrase has gone out of fashion so much, but at MIT in the late 80s, early 90s, the guys working the media lab would always talk about high-tech, high-touch. And there had been studies at that time, which I've never seen followed up, that said the more people spend time cyber, on the internet, alone but interacting with other people, the more they wanted entertainment interaction that was high touch. They wanted to go to groups of people, be pushed into people and stuff. And I kept waiting for there to be, and maybe the Chicago thing will start that off, but I waited for there to be an explosion, because if you're spending your whole day at work, if you're commuting electronically, and you're sitting at home and you're typing, interacting with people, and you're going to go out for an evening, it seems like better than a movie would be someone that comes into your space and you really get to experience that kind of thing.
It's just
and Close-Up is the best at that.
But not until people experience do they know it. They don't know what they're missing. Until they have it and they're like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Exactly.
I do a dinner show in Orlando, and it's 20 to 30 people. It's real intimate. It's in a steakhouse. It's still, I've been doing it 10 years now, but it's still not a big thing. We don't have billboards. But people come in, and now they've come back 4, 5, 6 times. Every year they come back because that.
And what is the situation, 20, 30 people? Watching you do one show at once?
It's a dinner show, so it's in 3 parts. So first we do tableside magic, then they have a little bit of food, then we have a guest magician do a 20, 30-minute show, then they have dinner, and then I do a 40 to a 50-minute show.
And you have a stage.
It's it's a room. It's just a room. I don't know what the dimensions are, but it's a very small room. We have a max of 8 tables. So tables of 2, 4, or 6, 8 people. So 20 to 30 people. And to me, that's still my favorite place to perform.
And what's it called?
It's at Christner's Prime Steak and Lobster, which it's magicshoworlando.com. That's the website. So if anyone's visiting Orlando and you're not a magician, because I like non-magicians.
And you go, let's see, how often do you do it?
We do it once a month.
Once a month. And is it the same time every month?
Yeah, usually the last Saturday of the month is when we try to.
And do they do other shows in there as well?
No, they don't. It's a privately owned for 25 years. This amazing family owns it, and when I first came in there, I came in there for a business meeting, and I met the owner, and I said, hey, have you ever thought about doing magic there? And they're like, no, we're a fine dining restaurant. We don't do that. And everyone was skeptical, and then we tried it for a couple of weeks, and I've been there 12 years now.
And what does it cost?
It costs, right now, $138 per person, and that includes the dinner and the show.
Wow. That's a good deal.
Yeah, it's a great deal. It's a really great deal.
And it's good food?
It's amazing food. It's always voted #1 steakhouse in Orlando. So it's a great place. And to me, like, it's where, and I have a team of magicians. So I've got 6 other magicians in Orlando.
So some nights you're not there.
I've made sure to be there because people are now upset when I'm not there. So I always have a guest performer and myself.
And then you're doing parlor magic, 40 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
What tricks you doing?
I don't know if I should reveal. I don't know. What do I do? Like, I do, I have my own pieces that I've created over time. I steal people's license plates, and I produce them for them.
Oh, that's great.
That's like, people come to me in Orlando all the time. They're like, you stole my license plate. They're so happy about it. So that's like a signature piece that people remember it. I do a lot of mentalism. I do extended metaphors. No.
do you do, and there's walk around beforehand?
Yeah, we've added that in because we do walk around every Saturday night there. So now we've started doing a walk around before the show as well, just to warm people up because it's always, when you come back out, people are no longer skeptical. They've met you, they've engaged you, and now they're just so happy to be part of it.
So they go and they see, that's over an hour of magic then.
Yeah. So I tell them, I say, exactly over an hour. I say, I think 3 parts, 40, about 80, 90 minutes of magic. Yeah, the last month I was going to do 40 minutes. I did 70 minutes. I kept on asking the audience. I'm like, everyone.
And they kept yelling, do it till you do it right?
Yes. and so it's, I don't know, it's a really wonderful place to experiment. I have a new idea for a new concept for a new show that I hope to launch in Orlando soon as well. I think that this idea of like Steve Cohen, the Millionaire's Magician, did in New York. That started a lot of other magicians doing shows like that. I think that's going to continue to flourish, and I hope to see it more. And I've always been a supporter of it. I started my company to help other magicians promote it.
But $138 means people can afford that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's an expensive night out, but it's not ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's why I don't have any magicians come to my show. It's great. I'm not even joking.
You've done that weeding out, sure. Yeah.
No, it really is like that's where I do my favorite material.
They can't. You can't comp them because it's beef.
Food, yeah. That's
You can't comp your beef.
Exactly.
That's expensive.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Genius. And now you've blown it.
I know, right? No, please don't come. Please don't come. When I was preparing to go on Foolus in the second year, I mean, I spent 4 months practicing that trick. And that trick I had already done thousands and thousands of times. But as I was preparing for you two, I had to rethink it, change the structure and the handling. And it's only thanks to doing close-up magic that I can do that trick 10, 20 times a night over the course of months.
Well, that's
the greatest
thing. Pilots, they don't care what you've done, how many hard landings. All they care about is flight hours.
Yeah.
That's all they keep track of is flight hours.
It's brilliant.
How long have you flown this thing? And George Burns, was in show business when I was a child, and many people say never got good till he was 40. There just is a skill you get from doing stuff over and over, and close-up can bang that out. So you do, 20 shows a night is very different than one show every 3 months.
And I'm so grateful that I waited to go on national TV, because being on Foolus was my first time on national TV, and I'm glad I waited 20 years to do that, because I wouldn't have been ready. It was all that time of messing up and failing again and again that got me to be there where I could be comfortable and pay attention to you guys.
Yeah, you did a great job. And thanks for being on here. I know you got to go.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Yeah.
Now it's Kostya, and I just still choke on your name.
No, you got it. Kostya.
And Amy.
Yeah.
Amy. So, it was Penn Sunday School.
That was Penn Sunday school.
Cha-cha-cha.
And to our listening ears,
You become naked.
all nature sang and round us rang the music of the spheres.
It'll be interesting to see. Next time I'm in Orlando,
Please.
you don't want magicians to come.
I ruined it.
I got the juice. I can pay.
Okay.
You'll have to actually stop. You have to actually put a stop on
We'll
my
have a
credit card.
doorman.
Yeah, because I can afford that.
Well, we'd love to have you.
I'd like to see that. The Saturday night, my chance of being a Saturday night in Orlando not working.
We'll move it for you, just for you. Let's hear it.
You know we love you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was terrific.
That was a blast.